If we could stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, James, could you take attendance, please?
Yep. President Schaefer.
Here.
Vice President Dr. Reese.
Present.
Secretary Summers here. Treasurer Hanser.
Present.
Trustee McDonough.
Here.
Trustee Schultz.
Here.
And Trustee Whitty.
Here.
All present.
Okay, changes to the board agenda? No?
There are none.
We've got Mrs. Nemi here from Clear Lake to do her presentation. Nice to see you.
All right. And then, okay. Hi, good evening. My name is Stephanie Nemi, and I am the principal at Clear Lake Elementary School. So the last time I presented, I might not have met all of you at that time. This is my second year at Clear Lake in the role of principal. I've been in the district for 17 years, and prior to coming into the principalship last year, I was the IB coordinator at Clear Lake and also the district elementary math coach. So I'm very excited to be back up here in year 2. We are off to an amazing start at Clear Lake. And so I'm very excited to be here to be able to share just like an overview of also things that maybe since the last time we saw you, some updates, and then also some points of pride from this school year as well. Okay. Oops. So at Clear Lake, as an IB International Baccalaureate school, we do frame the way that we look at our school improvement goals through the lens of IB, and we look at that through 3 different pillars: the learning community, learning and teaching, and the learner. So you can see that we've taken the district goals and then we have then organized them also through that IB lens to make sure that we're always making sure that we are making sure that we are following that lens of IB from that district level and also merging the district goals so that it's all one initiative and goals. So it's very cohesive. That's what we're trying to do, is just build that cohesion within the building so that we can also match the cohesion within the district. So some of our broad goals, and we'll get into them in a little bit as well. For our learning community, I'm going to be talking about how we do now also house our district elementary emotional impairment program at Clear Lake. I'm going to be talking about our positive behavior intervention support system, or PBIS. When it comes to learning and teaching, I have an update since I've last seen you about our IB self-study visit. I'm also going to touch base on just how we are working within our Tier 1 curriculum and interventions. And then with the learner, our You Matter campaign, as well as information about our Links classrooms and that program. All right, so a little update since the last time we have seen you. Our Clear Lake learning community, we are 430 students strong this school year, so we are up in enrollment at Clear Lake, which is wonderful. We are developmental kindergarten through 5th grade at Clear Lake. And we also house the district's moderate cognitive impairment classroom. As well, this year we have a new addition. We also house and host the district's emotional impairment classroom. So we're very honored as a school to have such diversity, and when it comes to special education, to be able to provide the resources and the services for such diverse learners within our building. So that's a little background on where we are currently as a community. Within our learning community, along with the other elementary schools, we also are working on our PBIS system, or Positive Behavior Intervention and Supports. Since we last started last year, we have really worked hard as a PBIS building committee to really look at, like, what do we want that to look like at Clear Lake? What do we want that to sound like, right? Because we are unique in the way that we house DK through 5. We also have some different programming going on. And so it was very important for us that we work together to create a behavior expectation matrix. So that has been shared with our staff, our community, and taught to students within the first 2 weeks of the school year. This is also part of our essential agreements within all of our learning spaces. We really utilize all the spaces at Clear Lake. We have, and you'll see in some upcoming pictures, some new outdoor spaces that we're utilizing for learning spaces. But we want to make sure that no matter where you are at Clear Lake, that there is visible signage and expectations, and that it is clear to everyone within those spaces, the ways of being. And we do frame our essential agreements and our way of being in the building around the 3 IB learner profiles of being caring, a thinker, and principled. And so within our behavior matrix, we have taught children, what does it really mean to be like a thinker in the cafeteria? Or if I'm at recess, what does it mean to be caring? Or if I'm in a classroom or in a hallway or even a restroom. We have even had classroom lessons with students with our family school liaison to really discuss, like, this is what it really means when we are in these different spaces. And it's been great because we've also been able to utilize different staff within the building to also build that learning community. So that way students are now familiar with not only our family school liaison, but also our school psychologist, our teacher consultant, our school social worker, those other adults within the building that are part of our learning community. We're also making sure that students are aware that those are other adults within our community that they can go to for positive behavior intervention and supports. So like I said, we have done, all classrooms have had PBIS lessons in those different spaces within the first few weeks of school. We are pretty excited as well because Mr. Barles and Mrs. Russell have also helped at the district level for PBIS on the bus. So I'm really excited to be able to get a school bus to come over. We're going to be doing additional lessons for that. And then we also, as a school, also plan some different times within our school year to make sure that we're reviewing those behavior expectations. So, like after Christmas break or after spring break, like after those long breaks where we just want to make sure we can come back, we're all on the same page, and we can finish that school year strong. We also, in addition to our PBIS, we were doing the IB Student of the Month last year, but we really wanted to make sure that this year we cranked it up a notch. So we are doing what's called Wildcat Tickets, and we are having Wildcat Wednesdays. So students in all the learning spaces are able to earn Wildcat tickets from various staff members for being either caring, thinker, or principal, or sometimes all 3. It's kind of up to that staff member. We've also, as a reflection of making sure we're including like our noon aid staff, we've adapted our tickets. The typical Wildcat ticket is blue. We have now adapted in response to making sure, like I said, those additional adult supports are included and can also recognize those positive supports. So then they're issuing green tickets, so we can then separate out if your child comes home with a green ticket, it means that they're being recognized in this other learning space. We also have golden tickets for our guest teachers when they're in the building, so that's reserved. If we see a gold ticket come home, it means that they're being recognized by guest teacher staff. And I have pink paw tickets. So if you get a pink one, it's from the principal. And then again, it's another way to recognize, those different ways that the different adults in the building are recognizing positive behaviors. And then on Wildcat Wednesdays, we have a raffle where our family school liaison comes over the announcements, and we choose students from every grade to come on down. If you're a golden ticket or a pink ticket winner or holder, you are automatically a winner for that week. Students who are not selected that week are then kept in the raffle and could be selected for the other raffles on Wednesdays. And then in addition to weekly celebrations, we've also bumped up to having monthly celebrations. So we are now recognizing and celebrating as a whole school our positive behaviors. We have different things that we have planned throughout the school year, but we always will kick off with recognizing our IB learner profile students of the month. And we've actually adapted that to not just being the IB Learner Profile for Caring Thinker and Principled, but also renaming it to be a portrait of a graduate student of the month to again encompass to make sure we're recognizing students for all of the learner profiles this school year. So a lot has been happening within our PBIS system, a lot of positive behavior. It's very exciting. We have our next one coming up. We have our whole school PBIS Pajama Spirit Day coming up on Friday. So all students are invited to wear pajamas on Friday, and we'll also have our whole school celebration that morning before we head home on that half day. Okay, here's just some pictures. I didn't want to save them all to the end, so I've kind of grouped them as we're talking. So here are just some of the things that we've been sharing. The couple pictures at the bottom are of staff delivering those lessons in the different learning spaces. And in the middle there, that's actually our restroom. We're outside the restroom there doing that lesson. You can see students dropping in our paw tickets into our box. And the slides are cut off just a little bit so you're not able to see the box on the side. But we do have a designated space where students come by, they drop off their tickets. And so it's kind of like a raffle ticket where we tear it off. So that way the one part of the ticket is going home so that parents know. And I did a video at the beginning of the school year that was shown at all curriculum nights that talked to parents about like, if you see your child come home with this ticket, this is what it means. You see some kids who are also picking out prizes, and then an example of some of our essential agreement boards. So you can see that the signage is visible. It's also cohesive across the building, no matter whether it be a classroom or like for our lunchroom. The boards are all similar in that way. We also decided to do whiteboards for our essential agreement board to be reflective that from year to year, groups are different. Things arise. If we want to add, delete to things, the whiteboards allow us to do that. So instead of just doing like a poster where, that costs a lot of money to print those posters, have them reprinted to be responsive, we have decided to go with whiteboard ones. And at the very top, we have a picture of our first whole school assembly for September. Okay. Also, since I last saw you, we have had our 5-year IB self-study review. I do thank both Mary and Colleen for being a part of that interview team, and they participated in the self-study with us. It's kind of like a laundry list of all of the things that the visiting team came out with as strengths. But really, one, I do want to just recognize that they did uplift from the interviews from both of you, just that we do have a strong pedagogical leadership team, both at the building and district level, so they did recognize that. They also recognized our efforts for the social, emotional, and physical well-being of the students and the staff there. They could see that that was evident in work that we were actively doing. That we are also, working to make sure that students also have those career-related experiences. That was a highlight for them. We also strive very hard at Clear Lake for that career-focused education connections. They had highlighted that we also see that, in the end, we are really actively promoting positive change with our students and taking action within the local and global community, and that our teachers are really working to focus on conceptual learning within their units of inquiry. So just some of those highlights within each of those sections. Areas that they've come back saying that we are able to grow and continue to reflect before our next 5-year self-study visit, would that we be continuing to grow our understanding, because now within the primary years program, they have gone to like what's called the enhanced PYP. So we actually, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, but we have a number of new staff. So it's also making sure we're building that understanding with the new staff, bringing along veteran staff, just making sure we're in the enhanced PYP. That we're going to continue to foster the development of those approaches to learning skills, working within our units of inquiry to be very transdisciplinary, so making connections between subjects, and then just trying to find ways. Some of their feedback was, how might we find ways to have our staff collaborate and reflect more often? So some of that is just like feedback that we also then take on to the other levels to say, like, this is some things that the IB has come and recommended to us, and that we will look at then. So that looks like master scheduling and things like that. But overall, a great visit. We're very glad to be able to grow from this and then move forward and then see where we really are at again in another 5 years. Okay. For our Tier 1 goal and instruction, we are continuing to look at literacy and what does that look like in DK through 5th grade. We're also really working hard at our interventions that we are providing when it comes to literacy. We had just begun last year some new literacy interventions using decodable text, and also we have new staff within our intervention team. So some of our goal is just, again, we're building the capacity and the knowledge of our staff to best meet the needs of our students when it comes to literacy. So some of the things that I have on here is that as a staff, we're going to continue to look at, what are those essential instructional practices? How does that look and sound in our classrooms from a DK5 level? Looking at also our elementary instructional playbook as a way to say, like, within our learning communities, do we all have these things? Are they visible? How are we making connections for kids? Because literacy runs throughout your whole day. So really trying to uplift that and really work that transdisciplinary lens when it comes to literacy. And again, you can kind of see some things have been cut off here, but again, you can see like IB language using the IB learner profile being principled. This classroom has taken it on into like book clubs, right? So again, trying to angle that lens of IB within also the curriculum. You can also see that we are working on one of the essential practices is interactive writing as a practice for DK2. So those are just some writing samples that, like, as I walk by in the hallways, I will see that the kids love like having an audience. That's the whole purpose, right? Is finding that authenticity within writing. And so there's like a letter to me, and then I'll write back on the bottom, and then we have used it to greet other students and staff, and it's just like a great practice. So we're really trying to grow that to make sure that we're all doing those essential literacy practices at Clear Lake. Okay, within our You Matter campaign, so now we're to the learner and we're thinking about the individuals within our system, both students, staff, and our families. We're really working hard to find ways to make connections with all of those groups. So we have started something for our students that we're calling positive postcards. So staff members are writing positive postcards home to students in their classroom at a monthly level. We have also provided Clear Lake keychains that we'll be adding onto that. So all staff, all students received a keychain to show that connectiveness. We're going to talk in just a minute about our Link Classroom and how that fosters a sense of inclusion and belonging. And we have also this year, we're getting off the grounds a homework club to also then support students outside of the school day to find other ways to help them within grade level content. And so we are just in the early stages of that, of looking at our data to find out who are students that might be struggling, where maybe like there's other things impeding them within the learning environment that we can then help them overcome to help them feel then again comfortable and that their needs are being met as well. For our families, we did try to host, our first parent morning meetup. We're trying to do things outside of just our typical PTO meeting date where it's in the evening. So we were trying to meet the needs of parents who maybe the morning time would be a better time to meet with us. So we provided coffee and some pastries. I came out there. We also had different staff members out there, PTO members out there. And the first one was really, we were inviting families to just come up and also connect with each other, to also help foster connections between our Clear Lake families, for new kindergarten families or families who have moved to Clear Lake or families who are maybe because of COVID, right, we've not been able to gather in that sense. So that was our first meeting. We also look forward to some other times, and the feedback has been to try it again, but maybe pick a different day to again try to meet the needs of families in their working schedule. But we really enjoy being able to offer both morning and like after school times to be able to just have more of those informal connecting kind of gatherings. We also utilize the Clear Lake Connector to help our families feel connected to what is happening at our school. We try to not just, share the different events, but also shine a light on the different learning and the teaching that's going on in the building. And for our staff, all staff received a back to school postcard. This also includes ancillary staff, bus drivers, just welcoming them back. So happy that they're a part of our Clear Lake team. We've been doing staff grade level department shout outs, recognizing those people within our system. We have some staff appreciation luncheons and different, like as a wellness committee, trying to figure out some different monthly offerings that would be different, and also staff check-ins. So you can see, so on the Friday the 13th, staff were greeted with donuts, and like we went out to buses and make sure that they also got donuts that day too. And they're also going to be included in our upcoming luncheon on November 1st because we really do look at our bus drivers as well as part of that Clear Lake community, helping us get our kids to and from school. Okay, so now I'm to my links classroom, and I'm going to have two students from Clear Lake come on up, and they're going to introduce themselves, and we're going to share a little bit about our links program. Okay. So this school year, as I've said, we now also have, for the district at the elementary level, we also have an emotional impairment program. This is in addition to our moderate cognitive impaired program as well. And then we also know we have other students within the building that might have diverse learning needs. So as a Clear Lake group, again, having a sense of belonging and inclusion really matters to us. And so with our school social worker, who comes with experience from another district, she had suggested that we start link classrooms. So this school year, it was communicated to all of our teachers that, various classrooms might become a link classroom for the year. And it might change as students are in different grades year to year. But the expectation is that a link classroom, then we would have peers within the classroom that would volunteer to be a link peer. And then those peers then work with our school social worker, our family school liaison, our speech pathologist, myself, to be able to help build their skills with working with students and also the skills of also our diverse learners. And then through this, we have 60 students this year. So our link classrooms are, it ranges from kindergarten to currently third grade. And it's been amazing because, again, this is voluntary, okay? So students volunteer to be a link. So this evening, I have two students here who are part of our links. They're in a link classroom this year, and they have volunteered to be link students. So ladies, I'm going to have you introduce yourselves.
Hi, my name is Evelyn, and I'm in third grade.
I'm Brinley Guest, and I'm in third grade.
Okay. And so, ladies, can you share with us, why did you choose to be in the link program?
I choose to be in the link leader because I wanted the kids to think that they were included and to be happy.
I thought I could help a fellow student learn.
And so it's only October, but what do you think is the best part so far of being a link student?
That when they come in our classroom, that I love helping them and making them happy and smile and making their day.
That I have built a friendship with Lucas, who I am a link leader, and I enjoy helping and being with him during the day.
And then, so we're always reflecting, right, as IB students. And so what's something you've learned from being a link student so far?
that everyone's different and that's okay, but just treat them the way you want to be treated.
Everyone learns a little different, and that's okay. Being kind and accepting lets other students feel comfortable in our school and classroom.
So these are just 2 of our caring students, and within that 60, like I said, we have students that range from kindergarten to like our 3rd grade ladies, and just it's wonderful that no matter like where the learning space is, that students from all grades, all abilities are able to come into school at Clear Lake and feel connected to their peers. Because research really shows, right, that when we are trying to work on those kind of skills, those social skills, communication skills, self-management skills, right, that really children learn best from their peers. So while these other students, they have other services and things that we're doing, with adults where we're trying to work on those different skills, the work that then and the learning that they do just through peer connection, it's so valuable. Like we cannot, match that as adults. It really takes the peers and the whole learning community to really make it that special place where everyone really does feel like they belong. So then we do have some other pictures. You can see it's varied. We are in different classroom settings. Like I said, different classrooms are linked classrooms. So that is the classroom that those students then, that is their home room, and then would participate with that classroom for, academics, if we're doing field trips, if we have assemblies, things like that, they would be going with those groups. And then as well as going into the other settings, where we, again, utilize all of the learning spaces at Clear Lake. We have game day at Clear Lake for the LINK students. And then, again, that's just another positive way where we can put all of those skills together for the peers to have those interactions. And then, they're outside at recess. We did assemblies today with kids, and it was so great because, like, they're, as those students come in, they really do look, and the students are inviting them, helping them know, like, where their class is, where to sit, and also modeling those behaviors, too, that we're working on. So it's been so wonderful. Like I said, it's only October. I'm very excited to see this program continue to grow. Because so far, I think, like, as you've heard from the girls, like, it's just been a great experience for all of us. So thank you, girls, again. Okay. Okay, and then I am gonna kind of end tonight with a wrap up with just some points of pride. We also this school year welcomed our Clear Lake therapy dog, Lucy. So she's pictured up at the top there. We appreciate Mrs. Gordon, who is our media specialist, who is her handler, for taking that on. And she greets the students every day. She's available both for sign up to come to classrooms and also because Mrs. Gordon's our media specialist, she's also in the library. We also welcome Captain, the Clear Lake Wildcat. He is our new Clear Lake mascot, so he's been making an appearance, coming to different assemblies. He was at the homecoming parade, all sorts of things. So it's very exciting to have Captain and have a mascot that can be at Clear Lake activities. We have also, I would just say, had a really wonderful engagement level with our families. I've included some pictures from our homecoming parade and also our walk to school day that we had earlier this month. That bottom picture for walk to school day, you can see how large of a group that turned out. I mean, these are families that I'm like, I know you ride a bus, right? And you're here. Right, so they're still showing up, they're coming to things. Same thing with the homecoming parade. It was like amazing how many families came out, how many new families to Clear Lake came out. They're in their Clear Lake stuff, they're ready to be out there. So I find that very encouraging. I'm proud of them, that families feel connected, that they're involved with our learning community. And then I have a snippet of what our Clear Lake staff essential agreement is, because since I've last seen you, we have like over 9 new staff members, instructional members to our team, right? So we have like 21 sections and 9 new staff members, right? That's a lot. So I'm very proud of how our Clear Lake team has come together. It really is a sense of family, very supportive. And I love that no matter if you're like the brand new teacher that literally started, we have a teacher, this is her second week of school in first grade, to someone who's been there for over 30 years. Just seeing that all together and seeing our staff grow together is just really, I'm very proud of them and the work that they have done. So that is all I have for you this evening. Yeah.
All right, so I'm partial to Clear Lake, obviously, because my kids go there, but the Link Classroom, I'm very appreciative of. In the district that I grew up, in my elementary school and middle school, neighboring community, Clarkson, had that integration like that. And I don't think I understood the value of it as a kid, but to have then that inclusiveness and seeing the diversity and just being accepting and warm and welcoming, you know, some of those friendships that I made back then still have carried into my adulthood. And so it's great to see it started back up, and I apologize if the other elementary schools are doing as well, but I think it's great. So keep up the great work. And for the girls that came in tonight, thank you for volunteering and thank you for coming up.
Awesome. Thank you, thank you. Thank you, Stephanie. You are a jewel in our cap, there's no doubt about it. You know, I'm partial too. She taught my older kids back when she was a teacher, so I am not surprised to hear all of the wonderful things that you're doing at Clear Lake, because you always put students first as a teacher, always put students first. Always put their needs first, always put your special students first. I am not surprised that you carry that into being a principal, and of course, all of your IB. It's awesome. Good job. Thank you.
No, I just was waving. Thank you, Stephanie. Thanks, Stephanie.
Very good. Good stuff. Okay, we don't have any scheduled public comment for the board agenda, is that correct? Yeah. So moving right on then, the consent agenda, minutes from the October 10th meeting. Go ahead, Erin.
Move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Can I have support? Amanda? Any discussion on the agenda? No? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Passes. Next is superintendent report.
Yes, we have especially exciting reports for you tonight. All numbers, so get your math hats on. And we're going to start with our audit, correct? So Jacob, thank you so much for being with us tonight. You know, it's terrible when you have to follow 2 third-grade girls.
You know, we look at numbers all day long, and that's a tough act to follow, and then they just leave. You know, this is riveting stuff, too. I can't compete with all they're doing at Clear Lake.
Right.
Miss Nemi,
Yeah.
Stephanie.
Yep.
Gosh, I love hearing about PBIS, all the cool things with that. My kids come home with, we have Raider tickets in my home district,
Okay.
but similar programs, and it's so cool to see
Yeah.
how excited she was talking about these programs and all this cool stuff they're doing. The Links program, and I had to Google what pedagogical
Yeah.
is. I didn't know that word. So we all have learned something tonight. So my job's super simple as an auditor.
Oh, that's awesome.
Super, super easy, because all I do is click this button. Button right there.
There you go.
And it's this paragraph. This is the whole point of the audit, is this one paragraph in that big, thick, 140 PDF.
All this joyful
all that
reading I get
paper.
to do tonight?
This is what matters right here, and it says the financial statements as they're presented are free from material misstatement. And so, in our opinion, the financial statements are good. So, congratulations to those 3 and many more in
Yeah.
the district who made that possible. Okay.
Yeah.
Now we'll go into some cool stuff.
Okay.
And
No.
I thank you for your time. We'll go through some numbers here real quick. To get to that opinion, though, takes a whole lot of work. And that's really where the work comes in, is understanding what you're doing as a district. We want to know what your internal controls are, how you're safeguarding assets from theft and fraud. We want to look at your processes, your procedures, look at your policies. We look at journal entries, we look at receipts, we look at disbursements. All these items on this sheet are all tests that we're doing to make sure that we can say with some certainty that the financial statements are free from material misstatement. This year we looked at federal programs. Because you're receiving federal dollars, we have to look at those. We look at capital projects, making sure those dollars were spent appropriately, and sinking fund dollars are spent appropriately too. So we have that audit opinion, and then we have comments. There's really 3 levels of comments. Material weaknesses are things that are wrong and need to be corrected. We didn't have any of those, so well done. Significant deficiencies would be a lesser in scope, right? They're still significant, need to be addressed. We had none of those. No question costs, those would be dollars that you spend inappropriately, none of those. And current year findings, if the federal programs weren't spent appropriately, those would be findings, none of those. So again, well done by the crew in the district. Management comments are best practices, things to work on to be better at. Making sure bank reconciliations are timely. We've already got a fix for that put in place. You and most every other district in the state of Michigan is struggling with how to spend food service fund balance. We're over what the state says is your maximum allowable amount. We've been in that position for a couple of years. A lot has to do with the additional revenues we got during COVID. So looking at that and how we can spend those dollars in accordance with those rules. And then just monitoring of budgets, making sure budgets are compliant with our expected expenditures. Just putting a little extra effort into that, and I know you've already put some changes in the business office to address that issue. So thanks for taking those comments to heart. Number-wise, and I talk real fast. Sorry, Mary. What I look at in a balance sheet is that first column, general fund, right? That's how you spend your dollars, is the general fund. Most of our operations are in that fund. And this is a snapshot in time. This is as of June 30 for the balance sheet. And I expect to see cash, and I expect to see due from other governments. And by George, those are the largest ones on the balance sheet. On the flip side of that, money we owe is the bottom section of that, accounts payable, and all the stuff related to our wonderful teachers. Their payroll, their 147C money, their pension, all that other stuff, all those other costs are accrued expenditures down below. Again, right in line with what we see. The net of the assets and the liabilities gives us our fund balance. General fund ended at about 16.6 million. If I'm looking at that right, 16.8, thank you. And that 16.8 is really broken down into a couple different categoricals. We set some money aside for prepaids. That's stuff we've already spent the cash for, so it's not really part of fund balance. We have assigned for education costs, assigned for education solutions, assigned for athletics, and assigned for future healthcare costs. That leaves us about 11 million of fund balance that's assigned for long-term debt. And that's because of the debt of the district. We assign that for long-term debt. The management does. We can talk about those percentages. Historically, we've always looked at fund balance as a percent of expenditures. Well, with ESSER dollars and all the other costs, the state of Michigan and 147C dollars, all these extra costs and extra revenues, the state of Michigan has switched to a little bit of measuring that by using unrestricted revenues, and that's that top number, 24%. 24% is a healthy fund balance, and that's where we like to see it. When we look at the statement of revenues and expenses, this is how you're spending those dollars. General fund had almost 107 million of revenues, and they spent about 104.4. That means that we had an increase in our fund balance of about 2.5 million, taking us from the 14.2 up to the 16.8 that we saw on the previous page. We like to look at the budget, right? How did you budget? And we made the comment about budgeting accurately. There were some line items that were over budget that's disclosed in the financial statements, and those are by function. But in general, the budget is pretty close. I mean, we're 2 million off, but we're dealing with 106 million, that's not too shabby. So again, putting effort into that budget where we like to be above budget, we can't expend funds by law that we didn't budget for. You, the board, has not approved and budgeted for. So that's why we monitor that piece of it. Where we get those revenues, you can see that big green bucket, that's the state of Michigan. 81% is coming from the state of Michigan. That's why we continue to advocate for state aid allowance, continue to advocate to make sure students are in seats to increase our FTE. FTE, state allocation, makes up 81% of our funding sources. So it's huge. Where we spend our money, we measure that between instruction and supporting services. All of that is generally direct, the instruction is direct classroom education. Supporting services is everything else. And that's generally what we typically see in an allocation between those of a district your size. 5-year trend of revenues and expenditures of the general fund. The blue line represents those revenues. Green line measures expenditures. Really something happened in 2021, 22, and that was those ESSER dollars coming in. Just added a whole lot of revenue and a whole lot of expenditures to the fund balance and to the operations, as well as increasing the 147C, that's the subsidy of the MIPSers and OPEB plan for the employees. So that's pass-through money, it's grossing everything up. So that's why we see that rise in there, as well as our increase in foundation allowance and our increase in FTEs playing a factor in that. There's that one metric of the two, FTEs, how many students we have. This is a measure of that, this count day, this is the number. Saw a little bit of dip, but again, great growth over the last 10 years. Great things going on in this district. So proud of everything that you guys have done. That other half of that is the state aid allocation. We saw a nice bump for 23. We've got a nice bump again for 24. So the state's giving us some money. I like that. Makes us
once.
For once, they're giving us a little bit of
A
money.
little bit of money.
But again, rising FTE back, back in 20, we saw that level off. We saw it dip, 5 years to 10 years ago. So it's not uncommon for that number to go down. It's happened in the past. We want to make sure that doesn't happen, so we advocate for the state to give us as much as you can in our foundation allowance. All right, we talked about the 147C money, and for those that don't know, the state subsidizes our retirement and health care costs. Our out-of-pocket cost is that green line, 28%. So 28 cents on every payroll dollar goes to pay for MIPSers, which is the health care, and OPEB, which is MIPSers, which is retirement, and OPEB, which is health care for our retirees. The blue line is how much it is actually costing us. The difference between those two is what the state pays us, and we simply pass through to ORS to subsidize that rate to keep it down to the artificial green line. So assuming the state is going to continue doing that, there's no guarantee. Just want to keep an eye on that, and that difference there someday may come to bite us. And the state says, nope, we're not paying that anymore. All right, that's a real recap, fast recap of the numbers. Awesome job by the finance department, and again, everyone in those in the federal programs, Title I, special ed, making sure that the federal programs are being spent appropriately. Just some things for you as a board to think about where we are as a state, right? Where our political and our economical situation in the state of Michigan and how that affects us. Decrease in population means less revenue dollars, means less student state aid, right? Less population means less FTEs. So we need to be able to be flexible with our budgets with that, make sure we're spending appropriately. Those fringe benefit costs, we already touched on, retirement rates, and then just wanted to make sure those federal programs, those ESSER dollars are coming to an end. We're seeing the end of that. So making sure that we're doing what we can with the budget, and I know you guys have a 5-year trend, and I'm going to stay for Courtney for support for her in this next section. But use it, and just being aware that there's a cliff, right? Some of that spending, that federal spending that we've gotten, there's a cliff to that, and we're about to hit it. So making sure that we're doing what we can as a district to be ready for the cliff.
Can I ask you a question?
Absolutely, Heather.
Because I know you do like a lot of districts
Yeah.
in Michigan. What is the range of the per pupil payout from the state? I know for a long time we were at the bottom, we were at the lowest range, so is it,
That you are
is
at the
it
minimum,
91.50
you're
to-
at the minimum still. Yep.
so we're still at the minimum. And I know back in the day, it used to be, Troy used to get way more, almost double what we got back in the day.
Yeah, I
when
don't know what
first
the, I
started.
don't know what the maximum of it is.
So what is the maximum in Michigan?
Yeah.
It has, okay.
Yeah, the state's done a few things in giving those that are at the top of that tier less of an increase, and giving more to the bottom of the tier. And done things with charter academies, completely virtual charter academies, did not get any increase this year. So they're being more discretionary about those payments.
Equal education,
That's right,
a little bit.
a little bit.
Okay. All right, great, thank you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
And I think some of that too, Heather, that difference is from the hold harmless
Yeah.
provisions, so that when the districts didn't get a huge cut when they changed the way that schools were funded, so you didn't get, you're getting this much per pupil this year, oh, laws changed, now you get this, because districts couldn't just deal with
Yeah.
a cut like that so
Mary,
quickly.
great point. That all goes back to Proposal A.
Right.
30 years ago, Proposal A came through, something like that. I don't know. It's been a while. I'm not looking at you, Vicki,
Sure.
but I didn't mean, it was nothing personal.
Yes, I do
I-
remember the days before Proposal A.
Yeah. I don't.
I do, unfortunately.
But again, Proposal A wanted to hold those districts harmless, that their local revenue that they were generating was a higher rate than the rest of the state, the 18 mil standard rate. So now the way it's calculated is, you're given that state aid allocation and your FTEs minus your assumed local revenues. And so when that went into place, it didn't raise necessarily those taxes of those areas that were already paying more into that program. That's the short answer.
Good one.
Thank
I
you.
did have a question too, though.
Oh, sorry, Mary, yeah.
On the MIPSers, when we're talking about MIPSers, is where we are similar to other districts of our size?
Oh, the rates, these rates?
Yeah, because they're
These-
the same
These
for
are the same
everybody,
rates
right?
for every
Okay.
organization that participates in MIPSers.
Okay.
Yep. The same rates,
Alright.
percent of dollar, percent of payroll that goes into the program.
So even though well, just like with the per pupil allowance, I mean, the legislature can do whatever they want, whenever they want. It's all, it's all a guessing game.
Some of this is discretionary, right?
Right.
That
You
difference
say it
between.
much nicer than I do, but basically,
Trying to be-
they can do
trying to be-
whatever they want.
They can do whatever they want, and so that's the real caveat with this, is that delta between the green and the blue is right now is being subsidized. They could turn that spigot off. I don't know, there's no indication they will, but it's still a fear of mine that says, okay, well, now you gotta pay 44% out of pocket. Will
Yeah.
they do that? I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know what they'll wanna do with that program.
Yeah.
It's all
Okay.
in an effort to pay down the debt,
Right,
right? All the unfunded liability.
right. Well, thank you, and thank you for the
Yeah.
pie charts. Love the pie charts. Thank you,
Color.
thank you.
Thank you.
I have one quick question. I'm
Informative,
sorry.
thank you.
Amanda.
On one of your three recommendations, the monitoring of budgets, where it says continued improvements to the budgeting process will help to ensure that expenditures are not made in excess of appropriations. Can you elaborate on
Yeah.
that, on your findings?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
So in the big packet, which is on the board documents, there's a footnote, and it's called compliance or budgetary, and it lists maybe 5 line items that are a function, right? So it's like, I'm gonna use the business office as an example, because I don't know which ones are in those line items. Business office may be listed, and it says, we budgeted $700,000 for the business office, because that's what the board approved, and that was your Appropriations Act, right? That's the law. You said as a board, we're gonna spend $700,000. Things change between when we approve that and when we are done with the year and have actual expenditures. If that's over, you violated that provision. Nobody's gonna go to jail. The state may issue a letter that says, hey, you were over in these 5 line items by a certain percentage. Please explain why. Things happen. That's all that comment is. We don't ever want to be over budget in our expenditures, because then we violated the provision. Does that help? Okay, and there's a footnote in there if you wanna dig through it, that lists out those specific items that were over budget.
And just to add to that, when the amendment is brought to the board, it goes from the original budget, and then the budget office tries to kind of fix those things where things happened, and we went over and under, and you got in February and amended. So this is from the amended budget.
Yeah, so.
And one of the things we're going to do is, if you recall, one of the changes we're going to do this year is bring you an amended budget more than just once in February. We'll bring you another one toward the end of the year so that we can try to make that amendment closer to the budget line.
Yeah, so the year under audit, right, June 30th, I'll just elaborate a little bit, Vicki, if you don't mind, is we approve a budget in June of the year before we even start the year. And so from that, we have to guess what our student counts are. We have to guess what our foundation allowance is. Our consolidated app isn't approved by then, so we don't know how much title money we're getting. Food service, we don't know anything. We're just taking the best guess we can, and that's right here. That's the original budget. Throughout the year, things change, right? We get a grant. We say, oh, we want to shift some money from this grant to this grant. That's the final budget, and that can be amended 1 time, 20 times, 50 times between June of the year before we don't know what's going to happen and June of the year right before it ends. And so it's zeroing in on some of those line items and those functions that we can grasp a better handle on what the final expenditures are going to be.
Sorry, I did have one more before.
Sorry.
And then in the other one, you talked about food services
Yeah.
and your recommendation that we look at possible enhancements to the program. I know a lot of this has to do with the new federal free lunch program.
Yep.
What have you seen in other districts?
So great question, because every district is in a very similar position. Most districts are in a similar position, right? The free lunch during COVID, we got a lot of extra revenue, and our food costs didn't really increase a whole lot, so we ended up with this surplus. Now this year, the federal government has said everyone gets free and reduced lunch. I don't know what that's going to mean, right? Does that mean that, okay, can we enhance the food quality? Can we enhance with equipment purchases? We're kind of limited on what we can spend with that, right? It's got to be dedicated toward food service areas, so I can't spend it on a lighting for the media lab, right? I have to spend it directly toward those programs, and the state outlines what we can spend it on. And there's May I come up and ask? Yeah.
Could we get a Slurpee machine?
I don't recommend it.
So in regards to food service, I was actually meeting with Patty and a consultant yesterday here to talk about capital purchases, enhancements to the middle school to enhance the food service program. Currently, as of fiscal year 22, not even talking about fiscal year 23, Patty and food service had a fund balance of a little over $1.5 million, which is very nice. But because there's certain limits to what kind of fund balance and the limits that you have for your fund balance, there's a spend down program, and that spend down program has to be approved by the state of Michigan. And so right now we are planning to spend some of that extra dollars that is accumulated in food service on these capital improvements, specifically throughout the district. And again, yesterday it was specific to this particular school. So.
Yeah, thanks, Sam.
Thank you.
I just say too, those capital improvements, right? There's an 8-10 month lead time on those as well. So we saw a lot of districts and plans this year that didn't quite meet that plan from last year because I can't get the chiller, I can't get the warming trays, I can't get the equipment I need for those capital outlay costs. So just something we want to continue to work toward to make sure we're spending below the maximum the state allows. All right. Last chance to ask Jacob a question. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thanks, and thanks to this group back here. Awesome job.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Do you want me to pull up your slides here? Are they on the?
Yeah, they're in the same spot that you have yours, I think. He used to come with somebody else, but.
I like to think I'm still a baby accountant.
Well, I don't know.
I'm getting old.
Experience. Yeah, very dumb.
Here.
Oh, I was gonna say, I would have fumbled all through that. Yeah, does that help? That helps? Thanks. Okay. Hello, thank you everybody for having me here. Thank you Jacob for going through the hard stuff with the budget last year. So as Jacob said, one of our improvement items from the audit were that we need to get better with the budget. So we started in the spring, we presented a 5-year budget plan to you. We recognized that it was pretty ugly, so we put a lot of effort into getting some position controls in place and purchase controls in place, and looked at really what we needed and where we could spend our money most efficiently. So, do I just click this button? Oh, there we go. Okay. Yeah, it's like, should be up. So here is what the 5-year budget plan is looking like today. We have down at the bottom, you can see that each year we have the net revenues over expenses. That's where we're gonna anticipate that we're gonna end the year at. And then I totaled the 5 years so that you can see if we stay with this budget plan, the deficit would be at a total of 7.8 million over the next 5 years. So although we have put a lot of practices in place, we still have some work to do. Down. Okay. So the revenue assumptions that I used for this projection, like Jacob was saying, it's kind of a guessing game. Before we get the state aid allowance each year, before the state budget is in place, we're kind of looking at trends to see, what has been done in the years past and what we expected for the coming years. So for the state aid, which is 22A and 22B, we used for this year's the 9608, which we knew that per pupil. And then for next year, I used a 5% assumption, and then in 26 through 28, I used a 3% assumption. I looked at the trends in the past years, and that seemed like the most reliable trend that I could see. We also met with a demographer back in the spring who looked at our enrollment and gave us some figures to base our enrollment off of. So for our seated enrollment, he was projecting that we would have a decline in enrollment. Basically what he was saying is due to more seniors leaving than kindergartners coming in, we would see a slight decline. OVA, he predicted that it would be about a 4% growth. Now, keeping that in mind, they blew that projection out of the water this year. So this year, I think full-time OVA was at about 18%, and then part-time shared time was at closer to 20%. So they had a huge growth this year, but that also means that some of that we're going to be over our 10% gap or 10% allowance that they can grow. So there will be some takebacks for the following year. Going forward, the projections that we're using are the 4% and the 10% that the demographer suggested that we use. And then we'll have to adjust based off of, actual enrollments at that time. Another big factor in the revenue is quite a few of the grants that are sunsetting this year. Can you not hear me? Is that better? Okay, so several grants that we've received over the last few years are sunsetting. The ESSER grants, we got quite a bit of money over the last few years due to COVID. We have 2 grants left of those that will be done by September 30th of 24. So most of that will be spent this year. Just a little bit will be going into fiscal 25. And then we also have the 11W money that will be done this year. And then we have an AEAP grant that was also a grant that was given to us, well, in response to the tragedy. So that was a large sum that will be sunset after this year. And in your packet, I gave you the chart that shows all of the years. There's letters next to the revenues and expenses to show those are the line items that we had large variances in. So for the revenue, one of the larger increases that we saw this year was an increase in the taxable value. So that made our state revenue go up a little bit. So that was A. And then B and C were a reflection of those grants sunsetting over the next 2 years. Some of the big expense variances, we added couple teachers and parapros into our special ed program, which increased one of those line items. The Varnum and Guidepost, the cost from last year to this year and next year caused a change. We had some position adjustments. Like I was saying, we put those position controls in place. So rather than when a position comes available through retirement or somebody leaving, we're really looking at those positions to make sure that they're needed, or if we can make some adjustments. We did make some adjustments in the business office as an example of one of those. Some other big changes are we had we met with Sam for the facilities plan. He put a 5-year plan in place. We also have a technology and safety and security. So there were some fluctuations from year to year, and that was some of the variances, and then some bus purchases. So looking at this chart, there are some other options that we have, and I'm going to let Vicki step in here before I show you those.
So the chart that Courtney has just shared with you is if we continue to do business just exactly as we are, along with adding the 5-year plans for facilities, the 5-year plan for safety security, and the 5-year plan for technology. And there are buses that eventually have to be built. We have roofs that eventually have to be fixed. We have boilers that are nearing end of life. There are, between facilities and some of our athletics and extracurriculars, there are things that we need to do to spend money on, equipment and facility kinds of things. In your past, at least from 17 to 22, and I don't know, Sam, if there was anything prior to 17, but from 17 to 22, you had a sinking fund that was on all of your taxpayers' tax bills, on your own as well. It was 0.75 mils. It was designated for a sinking fund. Your community had voted it in 2017. And it brought you close to $1 million every year. And that $1 million was used to offset those boilers and roofs and equipment and buses that you needed to have, which left you an additional almost $1 million in your general fund to pay for programs and staff. You can't use sinking fund for programs and staff. You can only use it for facilities and equipment. That ballot proposal sunsetted in 2022. So the last year that you got any of that money would have been last year in 23. There is nothing coming in for 24. What we're showing you, and what the board can consider, is you are facing an $8 million deficit, or $7.8 million deficit. $3 million, the good news about the deficit is that it's in 25, it's in 26, it's a little bit in 27, and by 28, assuming we eradicate the deficits and don't leave them there, you begin to recover again. And that's good news. Some districts around us, the deficit just keeps going. That deficit is smaller than what you saw when we brought you the 5-year projection last year, because we did position control. We eliminated 7 positions that we did not replace. We cut back travel, we cut back subscriptions. That saved about $1.5 million times 5 years, which is $7.5 million in savings. Also, the state has, they're going to recollect about $3.5 million from us, relative to those days that school was missed right after the tragedy. It's a state aid collection back for days that students didn't attend. And we used to carry that up in revenue, and so every year we had to put that $3.5 million deduct in. Not every year, it's only been 2 years, but the state has not collected it yet. You remember when Jacob told us we had $2.5 million left in our fund balance last year? We took that $2.5 million, we moved it to fund equity, that's why your fund equity went up, with the understanding, and Jacob concurred, that when the state charges us back that $3.5 million, we will take it back out of fund equity. So we have $2.5 million there that we put in, we'll add $1 million to it and take it out of fund equity. Therefore, that $3.5 million doesn't come out of your revenue, it's not part of this deficit. And so that helped the picture. That's why your picture changed. But even with those things, this is a pretty formidable task to say, can you cut $8 million out of your budget without touching programs for kids? That would be pretty formidable. So what we're putting in front of you are two other options. And we don't know if you'll want to do them. We don't even know if you want to do them, if your community will want to do them. But we felt it was our responsibility to bring it and put it forward to you. So one of the options is should the community approve it, would you like to try to put 0.75, exactly what came off the tax roll, back on the tax roll? And if you did, that would bring you about $1 million a year for 5 or 6 years, however long you wanted to extend it for, to continue to pay for those roofs and boilers and other kinds of facility things and not have to use your general fund for that. Or you could even go a step further and see if the community wanted to do something like 1 mil, which would then put $1.5 million back in your budget through the sinking fund to pay for those facility kinds of things. So what Courtney's going to show you now is how those two proposals impact the bottom line deficit.
So looking at this line, the top numbers are all the same, so I just shrank them down just to give it a little bit easier on the eyes to read. If you look at the pinky color, the first line, that's the $7.8 million for if we stay the same. We do nothing, we get no sinking fund, we don't make any cuts or anything like that. Like Vicki was saying, we have the option to do a 0.75 sinking fund that would bring the $1 million, so that is reflected in the yellow line. That would bring it down to about 3.8 million over the 5 years. And then if we did a 1 mil, that would take it down, it would reduce our expenses coming out of the general fund by about $1.5 million each year, and it would be about 1.8 million over the 5 years. So in keeping in mind that although this is a 5-year budget, the sinking fund plan, when we moved some expenses around that would be eligible from the facilities and the technology, it stretches out 6 years, because that would be how long the sinking fund would be pulling in. So you'd get either 1 million per year for 6 years, or you'd get 1.5 million per year for 6 years. So, and then these are some of the items, like Vicki was saying, you can't use sinking fund to do your normal operation. You can't pay for people, you can't pay for services. It's really only tangible items. Some of the things that we've identified are Evolve, the roof placements, there's a few buildings that need backup generators, HVAC and boiler updates. There are bus purchases that will need to be made in the next 5 to 6 years. Student and teacher technology to go one-to-one student computers. And then there's also some athletics and extracurriculars on the list. So those are kind of the things that we've identified that are expenses in the 5-year budget, that if we're able to get the sinking fund, that we would be able to do those. Otherwise, those would be things that we would have to put on that purchase control and see if it's something that we need now, can we push it out later, and make those decisions.
And obviously, if you look at the list, there are going to be some things you might be able to push out, but roofs and boilers and HVAC, buses, and the fact that your students have had one-on-one computing for a long time, it is kind of the standard of education now, you'd probably need to keep that. So there are some things that if the sinking fund didn't pass, you would have to take the money out of your general fund in order to keep those things in place. I think the other thing is that, the question always is, well, these are not really nice big numbers, but what would that mean to a taxpayer? And Sam, you double check me on this, but if someone had a home with a taxable value of, say, 300,000, and you did the 1 point mill, that would pardon? A $300,000 house would basically be a tax bill of $300 a year?
Yeah,
Yes.
it's about $100 per 100,000 taxable value,
Yeah,
correct?
for 1 mil.
For 1 mil.
And if it was the .75, it would be approximately $75 per 100,000 taxable value on the house. So that is what you had before, and that is what you may want to try to consider or not consider going forward. This is, of course, just preliminary, and we wanted to bring you the full picture and some options with that picture. And the deficit, I know one of the things that the board has asked me to do before I leave is to bring to you a budget deficit elimination plan, which we will do this spring. And in that plan, we will try to identify other costs that could be reduced. We'll identify, maybe there's some things on this list that would just not even be considered. We will continue to do position control to try to tighten up our staffing as much as possible. And we'll bring that to you in a budget adjustment, a budget amendment rather, as well as for this year, and then a plan going forward. I can't imagine what it will look like to try to get to the 7.8 million. I just need to be honest with you. That would entail a lot of different kinds of programming than what you're doing now. The 1.8 to 3, and I've done a lot of, as Jacob said, there's the white hair. I've been on the side of the budget when we've had lots of money. I was in Bridgman when the nuclear plant was all ours. And so in 1968, we had the first free preschool for every 3- and 4-year-old in our entire district because we had that kind of money. Not fair, but it was there. Now that we're being fairer and all the money gets spread, we are not the only ones facing deficits. This is not the first time a district's facing deficits, and unfortunately, it probably won't be the last. But I think it's doable if we can just get away from the 7.8 number somehow.
I think it's important to highlight too, we talked about this at great detail in the Finance Committee, that over 80% of our expenses are direct instruction to students. And so when you're looking to eliminate numbers this big, there's no way around impacting direct instruction without having, they're tough conversations to have. When we had the demographer, and I don't know if everyone got that sheet, our enrollment really isn't going to change significantly enough. It's not going to be like a 1,000 student drop. It's 100 this year, which you saw already from the first count day. It's less than 100 actually. And then it goes down to maybe 30 less the following year, and then it starts creeping back up because it's based on trends of not only people having children. If you're watching any of the legislative work that's happening at the Capitol, there's groups being put together to revive economy jobs here in the state of Michigan, and there's proposals all over to do different things. So I don't think when we talk about enrollment drops, although it is figured into our budget, I don't want that to be the takeaway that there's going to be a significant enrollment drop in this community. It's going to be, maybe a handful of a few hundred, which amongst 7,000 is a small impact to student instruction when we, already are teaching shortages for teachers as well in pipeline programs. With that being said, when you look at some of the things too that are on this list, just we also talked a lot about how Clear Lake, who presented today,
had to go an extra day of school last year because they didn't have a backup generator and continued to lose power. Same with Leonard. I think it's Lakeville that needs a new roof, right? These things will all have to be spent, however we go about them as a district. And then for those who follow our athletics programs, they are very strong. And we host a lot of events, not just for Oxford events, but for regional and countywide events. They're hosted here in Oxford. And the more we allow things to deteriorate, the less of that opportunity we have. And some of that does also bring in revenue that's probably not even figured into our budget yet, because it's not enormous revenue, right? It's small, but it's incremental and it's something to help support. But that would be something that we would potentially look at foregoing in the future as well. Personally, I enjoy being a host site for a lot of these competitions that are hosted here in Oxford. I think it's a neat thing to showcase some of the stuff we do from our other end, from an education instruction standpoint. Questions, I guess, right? You're done.
Okay. Thank you very much.
I actually do have a question.
Oh, sorry.
You mentioned OVA increasing, and there's a 10% ceiling or something of that nature?
Yeah, so not our full-time OVA students, but the part-time and then the shared time, we're capped at a 10% growth year over year. So we have to pay money back to the state if we go over that growth.
And so here is, well, the state has put a cap on shared time growth of 10%. We have typically grown more than 10%, which means we have typically had to pay a penalty back to them. The penalty's anywhere from $900 to over $1 million. It's not a small penalty. It's for every student over that 10% growth. When your budget was in a position that you had excess funds every year, you could afford to grow more, pay the penalty, and then next year, your floor went up 20%. See, if you grow 10%, your floor is up 10%. You pay a penalty on the other 10, but the next year your floor goes up 10. You now get all the money for all 20% the following year, and then you can grow again. When you're in a situation like us where you are actually where you have a deficit at the end of every year, and you are going to have to cut program positions, expenses in order to get rid of the deficit, you can't afford to have shared time also create a penalty, because that means you even have to cut more from other programs to pay the penalty. So what we've said to shared time is until the deficit is gone, you cannot grow more than 10%. And they can control that, because that's based on contracts that are done with other school districts, and you can control the number of contracts. OVA could also control their growth, but they don't need, OVA does not cost us a penalty, no matter how high they grow. The demographer thinks that eventually OVA is gonna peak, and is gonna start growing at the same level of other programs around us, basically because of two factors. One is there is a number of students for whom online learning is right, but that number is kind of this much, whereas seat time is this much. And the demographer doesn't think that's going to shift much in terms of students. COVID caused it to shift a little bit, and we still may be seeing a little bit of that, but I think that's going to level off. The second factor is the competition for OVA right now is bigger. It used to be just some national companies that came from anywhere in the country and started programs in place, but now it's Avondale schools, and it's Troy schools, and it's every other school in the state that are now replicating what we have done. And so that's going to take students away also. So OVA is sure they can beat the 4% a year, but we wanted to be conservative enough to put it at what it is and then see. This year, some of that spike was a lot of homeschool programs had shut down in the area, and OVA picked up those people from those programs that had shut down in nearby districts.
That's why we saw such a huge increase in the OVA portion this year, because like Vicki had said, those neighboring programs closed down, so they saw a big push coming in.
But it's more of a wild card. It's, you know, the demographer's not going to probably be as exact on that. He was pretty on target with our seat time.
So I guess, Vicky, from a timeline perspective, to clarify to everyone, because obviously we're just discussing it today, no motions are being made or decisions are being made, but the timeline, if you want to explain that.
Sure. So, as was pointed out by Jacob earlier, and as we have told you, we're going to bring you another budget amendment right around January, because there are still things we don't know. There's new categoricals that haven't come in yet, our student counts aren't solidified, so we're going to bring you another budget amendment early January. And sometime during the month of January, you need to make a decision on, do you want to consider asking the community for a sinking fund, to put the sinking fund back, or do you not? Because if you do, the time you can ask for that is May. That's the soonest you can go this year. And you would have to go in May in order to bring any money into the summer, next year's budget. If you don't want to do May, you could do November. I think after November, you could do February. I think if there's a primary, you could do August. You could do August.
There will be a primary in August, because there'll be an election in November.
Yeah, so there are other dates you can go. But one of the things we'll ask you in January is do you want to ask the community if they want to consider putting this back on the rolls in May? And if you do, we will have to create ballot language in August. And then we would we would bring information out to the community, and we would run an election in May. And then you see, do you pass or fail?
Yeah,
I mean,
February. We would
May.
need ballot language in February to make the May
in order
ballot.
for May, yes, I'm sorry. I got myself.
If we have a May election, that would probably be the only thing on the election, right?
Well,
It
no,
would be-
there's an election in May. I don't know. Do you remember what the election in May is?
I don't.
Okay.
That's why I think it's August.
No.
There is
We
another
already
one.
checked.
Oh, okay,
We
good.
already checked with the financial
right.
firm. There is a, you can't go all on your own. There is something happening in May.
Perfect.
I just don't know what it
I
is.
just didn't want us to have to
No,
incur that cost.
no.
There might be a better shot, though, in going for August, because it is a primary year and people are gonna get out and vote.
Well, it depends on
So
a
that
lot
might
of
be
things.
something to discuss too. Or maybe that would hurt us more. I mean,
don't
I don't
know.
know, that would be a good
There's
discussion
lots
point.
of, I think the biggest discussion is, do we want to ask the taxpayers to put this back on, or do we want to try to cut everything we possibly can out of facilities and then cut general programs in order to do those things that we absolutely have to do? So that's the bigger question. When you go, there's a lot of strategic, and many times you have to go more than once. So frequently, from my experience in other districts and looking at other districts who have done this, you typically go as soon as you can, and you see what your vote is, and then you determine when you go next, or if. But you typically, sometimes you don't pass the first time. It's a lot of education that has to come about. So,
So January, February, when we need to
yeah.
And put the language together, and really start orchestrating how it's gonna look, and
The ballot language has to be put out in February, yes. So I really think your decisions have to be made at your January board meetings for the whole thing. Yes or no, for May.
Thank you. So everybody start thinking about that, because believe it or not, that's, this is our last meeting in October, so, that is just really in a handful of meetings. So maybe start really doing some research on that and deciding how you feel. Pose your questions to Vicki. I don't need to be copied on them, but you can just email them to her, and then we can come together and discuss it again.
And we'll be meeting with the Finance Committee again, and we'll be bringing you, in January, as I said, we'll bring you this amended. So we'll see if there's any other thinking we can do, is there any other, and this is planning. I mean, as Sam pointed out, we know we have some roofs that need replacing, and we even have a couple that are leaking. We know we have some backup generators that are end of life. What we don't know is, are they going to be good through June, or are they going to be good through August? I mean, this is a plan. We can't pinpoint. We can just say that sometime over the next 5 years, these are the things you're going to need to address. So we'll be bringing you back updated information, first meeting in January, no later than that. And if we get information sooner from the state, we'll bring it to you in December, but I don't know that we will. Very nice job, Courtney. for
and
your
does,
First time.
I guess one, I don't know if this is a question, do they normally go in quarter mil increments? Or is that just to get an idea of what those were?
It's truly, usually is quarter mil,
Okay.
quite frankly, that's what I have seen in my history here with the public school districts, but, frankly, as Vicki has mentioned as well, the last sinking fund we had was a .75 mils that was voted on
Okay.
at the same time that our last bond was voted on back in
Yep.
2017.
Those two came together.
So again, going back with, what Vicki was mentioning as well, is that, the board can decide to do whatever type of, if they decide to do a sinking fund, if you decide to do a sinking fund, of your choosing. So we just decided to give two different examples here within the forecast of a .75, which is replacing what we had, which we no longer have, and then what would a mill look like?
Understood.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you, Courtney. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to Board of Education matters, we've got the varsity baseball field trip. Can I have a motion for that, please?
Amanda?
Move to approve the Oxford High School varsity baseball field trip request to Clearwater, Florida, March 2024.
Support. Erin, discussion? Anybody have any comments about it? Or questions about it?
go?
I wanna go. You wanna go?
Okay. I wanna go to Clearwater, okay.
I'm sure they're gonna have fun. Okay, no discussion, then we'll move to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. We've got the second reading of the policy updates. We went over them before, by number, title, and then brief explanation. Can I have a reading for that? Amanda, you wanna read that? Sure.
Move to approve the second reading of policy numbers 2623, student assessment, 6325, procurement federal grant/funds, 8400, school safety information, 1615, use of tobacco by administrators, 3215, use of tobacco by professional staff, 4215, use of tobacco by support staff, 5512, use of tobacco by students, 7434, use of tobacco on school premises, 9160, public attendance at school events, 7540.02, web accessibility content, apps and services, 7540.03, student technology, acceptable use and safety, 7540.04, staff technology, acceptable use and safety, 8315, information management.
Okay, thank you. Support? Erin? Discussion? Did anybody come to you guys with any additional questions after our discussion from last time? No? Straightforward. Yeah, okay. Thank you very much for the work on the policy committee. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. Finance and operations, the tax resolution, Sam?
Lots of money. Again, good evening. Yes, so last board meeting, obviously the resolution for the summer tax resolution was in front of you. Again, it's something that we annually do, and just as to reiterate that I mentioned last time, it's approximately 80% of what we collect for our from our taxpayers on an annual basis. So the summer tax levy is very important for the district.
Okay. We've got a recommendation. Anybody want to read it? Colleen? Thank you.
Move to approve the annual summer tax resolution for 2024 as presented.
Support? Amanda? Any discussion or questions for Sam? No? Okay, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Unscheduled audience participation? No cards? No cards. Okay, I'll take it. Lots of scheduled activities coming up. Can I make one change?
One change here, please. So as we know, the guidepost report number 2 is supposed to come out by October 30th, which would be Monday. And we are scheduling a number of meetings with parents across the community, as well as community members. And so I'd like to change the conversation over coffee November 8th. I really think that week is the week we're going to try to meet with all of the different parent groups as well as a community group. And I'd like to convert that meeting to a parent group meeting for guidepost report. I think that's what everybody will be wanting to talk about anyway, so. We will have.
So on the 8th?
So on the 8th, it will be a meeting for, in order for parents to have an opportunity to really talk with us, we're going to do a parent meeting at the high school, for high school parents. We'll do a parent meeting at the middle school for middle school parents. And then for your elementary parents, because they're kind of split, we'll do a parent meeting for Lakeville, Leonard communities, and then we'll do a parent meeting for Clear Lake, OES, and DA parent groups. And this night will be used for one of those groups instead of just a basic community for coffees. And that particular group was going to be at Oxford, and if you look down to March 14th, we also have a community coffee with Daniel Axford, and that is the same geographic community. So that community will still have a community coffee in their area on this schedule. Okay?
Anything else? No? Okay. Administrative clarification?
I have none.
Okay. Final board comments?
I just have one real quick.
Go ahead.
I just want to let everybody know that the Loft Apple Pies program has started. And so they are delicious, and get your orders in before November 10th for that.
Thank you.
Email Jeannie?
There's a form going around too. You can email cash or check, send to Jeannie DeSico, and I believe it was 20 for one and 35 for two, so better deal for more.
I've gotten those. Yep. I helped make them, they're delicious. Okay.
Heather. I just wanted to thank Mrs. Nemi for coming out today and bringing her students, and it was absolutely wonderful to hear what they're doing at Clear Lake. I just think it's like almost magical. I just think people ask me what's going on in Oxford, and I start telling them about all these wonderful things we're doing, and it's fantastic. So I just wanted to thank her, and a thank you for Jacob too, for coming out and his presentation, and for him taking the time to do the work, because I know he's been working with us for a long time, and he's almost like part of the family. So I really appreciate, and I really appreciate his hard work, because the reports haven't always been this good. You know, we've made a lot of improvements over all these years, so I appreciate the work the financial team, the business office has been putting into all this too. So, and taking the suggestions, and not having to wait for, well, let's see what happens, but you know what, that's a good point, you know, let's see how we can make that change. So, thank you for that, business office too.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, meeting adjourned.